Hello, MMA fans. Welcome back to the OFC commentary via radio style play-by-play with yours truly, Michael Magus. So, today's card is OFC, making sure I get the number right. It is 14. This was a big card, of course, with the Dirksen-Overeem feud, with both brothers going head-to-head and actually splitting the contest, with Valentin and Byron winning their respective fights. And there was some other good stuff on this card too, I think. Some things to make a big deal. It got off to a really bad start, but it did pick up with the debut of Ayrton Tobin defending his undefeated record. We had an interesting fight between Dan Boys and Pete Clover that ended in a leg injury with a nerve shutdown, basically. We had Jeff Crozier-Kaufman, who's always very exciting, with Sean Lawrenson making his debut. Brenda Pilzak picked up a big victory, so as did Jonathan Hallam. But at the end of the day, the fight that I picked that to me was the most fascinating, the man they call Chaos, Doug Braddock, taking on Tristan TNT Tromblay in a middleweight bout. Might be Tromblay's last middleweight bout because he weighed in at 192 pounds, which is a 7-pound weight miss, which is a little bit ridiculous, and we'll probably have to drop him or raise him up a weight class to make up for that, but we'll see. The stylistic matchup here was pretty simple, really. Tromblay is, as the name would state, dynamite. He hits really, really hard, but he does tend to be a bit of a low output striker. Doesn't tend to have a lot of hustle in his game. Tends to fight really just about as slowly as the opponent is going to let him fight. If we're quite honest. He's quite happy to sit at range, hack at your legs with low kicks, throw the jab out there, work in the right cross. Does change up pretty well between head and body. So he does have that going on for him. But that's not going to happen in this fight. And I don't even say that as like a spoiler. I just mean in general. Doug Braddock does not let you fight at that pace. He has a constant forward game, hyper-aggressive takedown specialist. His stand-up is not refined, but it has an urgency that allows it to do things. I would almost, to a degree, compare him to a Colby Covington-esque style. Not as a person, to be clear, but stylistically, in that his stand-up would not work in any way divorced from the takedown game. But because there is the takedown game, because there is cardio, because there is aggression, it does work. So I hope that makes sense, because that's what we're talking about here when you deal with the Chaos Theory, who's 8-0 in his MMA career, 9-3 Tromblay coming into this fight. You know what? Let's just get into it, because that's what we're here to do. Welcome to round one here in the middleweight division, although this is a catchweight bout because of the weight loss missed by Tristan Tromblay. Doug Braddock, Tristan Tromblay, and we're already off in this. We're like 10 seconds into this round, and Doug Braddock's already closed the cap and forced a clinch on Tromblay, who is landing some pretty heavy knees to the thigh, knee to the body. Got a couple of foot stomps in there. But the thing is that I'm not really sure. Really, the problem here is that even if he can stop the takedown, which he is right now, although he is now pushed up against the cage, so things are looking worse for him. Tromblay is not used to wanting or having to or fighting at this kind of pace that Braddock's going to put on him. And Braddock, I mean, even in this clinch, is being energy draining. He's just constantly looking to chain something in there. I mean, there was the hint of a little bit of a Kimura attempt right there while standing. That's not really an option, but you have to take it seriously because he's changing up, and there it is. There's the dump to the ground, and we are on the ground here, 1:07 into the first round. Braddock landing ground and pound up against the cage. There is not much that we've ever seen from Tromblay in terms of a ground game, to be honest. His anti-grappling, anti-wrestling game is to keep the range, and he did not do that here. Is now on the ground. He also makes up for being, pretty hard to take down. But it's basically still in the realm of Braddock right now, who is just, he's peppering on him, really. These are not fight ending or even fight altering ground and pound that he's landing right now, but he's working the body, he's working the head, and he's keeping it going here. You can't stand this up because there's a level of activity that you just can't deny. Tromblay maintaining half guard, but very much in an awkward position here where he's up against the cage, kind of sideways down there, and he's just getting dropped on. Whether it's a punch or whether it's an elbow, he doesn't really have any kind of answer here. Again, not a lot of power, not big ground and pound by Braddock. This is how he fights at such a high pace. This is not necessarily looking to end the fight as much as just kind of chillaxing, being in control, and being constantly moving. So I guess really not relaxing at all, but everything is very smooth. Trombley trying to get out, trying to cage walk, and just gets up to a knee and then immediately gets his leg basically swept out from under him again. And we're back on top with Braddock. Maybe a slightly better position here now because Trombley is now off the cage. He's now got his back to the mat, which gives him a little bit more movement ability because, of course, now he can move both directions. Before he was very much single directional. But he is being mauled here. I don't have a better word for what's going on right now than mauled. And at some point, he's going to have to do something more than just a simple attempt at a cage walk. And he's mounted now. Oh boy. Mounted with 90 seconds to go in the round. And now we're getting a little bit more oomph in that ground and pound. A little bit more big elbow there by Braddock. Actually has cut Trombley open on the cheek. Probably not fight ending ability because that's blood's going to drain down his face, not into his eyes. And we know that doctors usually will not step in for that kind of thing. Trombley is defending himself enough that I don't think that there's a stoppage chance here, but he really doesn't seem to have an idea of how to get back to his feet. I think we've maybe seen a very large issue with his ground game, a gap in the game that really isn't at all helping him here. And of course, you got to ask, what did the weight cut do to him? Because the question is, you come in at 192 pounds for a 185 pound fight. Are you overweight because of some kind of intentional plan to come in a bit heavy, or is this a case of just trying to cut too much weight? And I tend to think it's the former because I don't really know why someone would do this. I mean, he's admittedly never been submitted, but looking at this performance right now, that's actually fairly surprising as we're getting to the end of round number 1 here, and there is the horn. So we're heading into round number 2. Trombley definitely needs to make a lot of changes and figure out what he's doing here because it is a bit ugly right now as to what he's doing. So we'll see you in round number 2. All right, round number 2 starts off really a lot in the same way as round number 1. Braddock going hard for the takedown, briefly gets it, and this is only like 8 seconds in. So, I mean, this is not a good sign for Trombley. He did pop back up, did land a knee of his own. A little bit of blood, actually, on Doug Braddock's eyebrow there. So, maybe a target, maybe a cut that Trombley can work on and try and open up. But that's the first positive thing that's happened for him in about 6.5 minutes here in this, or 5.5 minutes here in this fight. Braddock this time eating a couple of leg kicks, but again, he's kind of hoarding him towards the cage. Trombley needs to not put his back on the cage, needs to not do that. And we're back on the cage and immediately elevated and put down to the ground here. Less than a minute into the second round, and we are in the same spot that we spent most of round 1 in. This is going to be a bit painful. Trombley this time partially getting back to his feet there against the cage, so at least like limiting the amount of damage that's coming in from Braddock. Not a lot going on here right now. It's kind of stalled out, but Braddock is in control. Braddock is doing his thing. Yes, he is bleeding, but I mean, at this point, he's just bleeding on Tromblay, and there's not really a lot that Tromblay's got to offer him right now. And they get briefly back to the feet here, and body lock takedown, and we're back on the ground. Braddock on top once again. That's the thing about Braddock, is also he's got a lot of different ways he can attack you with a takedown. He's not a single leg or a double leg guy specifically. He'll use a single leg. He'll use a double leg. But he'll also use the body lock. He'll use the trips. He has been known to even throw out an Imanari roll or even a guard pass every once in a while. We will see if he has... Sorry, just looking at my window a little second there. Something was going on. Anyways, we're on the ground here. Trombley does have the full guard. He is trying to work for something here. It looks like maybe a sweep, maybe a submission hold of some kind. He did go 2-on-1 against the left arm of Braddock, as if he was maybe thinking about a Kimura or an armbar. Or maybe just kind of trying to brute force in a triangle choke or something, but didn't really go anywhere, and he ended up just getting absolutely slammed in the body with a series of right hands as well. We got about half a round here, and I mean, we saw in the first round that Trombley just doesn't really have a way back up to his feet. This is a serious problem, and one that I can't emphasize this enough. I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised it's not come up before in his career, because to be honest, we are talking about a 12-fight veteran here who's never been submitted, never really even been controlled particularly well. He does have 2 decision losses, which did involve a lot of wrestling, but at the same time, he is very stuck here, and it's not looking great. As Braddock does manage to step over into half guard there. Again, Braddock is very patient. He doesn't feel the need to do a ton. I should not say that, because he's doing a ton. Like, he throws a lot of ground and pound. Like, we're very quickly approaching an OFC record for ground strikes landed in a single fight. But there's no urgency in a way to it. It's just like, all right, do something, and I'm going to do something back. And he's not really... He seems very comfortable working from the half guard here. I don't blame him. He spent a lot of the first round in the half guard, and it wasn't really a problem. So I feel like we could probably have this one. Oh, okay. The referee steps in and stands this up with about 50 seconds to go. That's a bit weird. Let's see if Trombley can do anything as he comes out with a flying knee attempt. And Braddock scoop slams him like a pro wrestling power slam. And we're back on the mat with a little over 30 seconds to go. I'm not sure that a naked flying knee is really what that called for. But okay. He was trying to do something. And obviously, I mean, Trombley does need moments here in this fight, because he doesn't have them right now. But now he's got Braddock in side control. Not a lot of time to work with. Braddock is kind of positioning maybe for a crucifix. But with less than 10 seconds to go now, I don't really think we're going to see a ton of activity here that's going to end the fight. In fact, there is the bell. So 2 rounds in, Braddock is up. And you have to imagine those are probably very close to 10-8 rounds in both cases. The second round was better for Trombley. He did have the flying knee attempt, which, as ineffective as it was, at least was cool looking. He did open up a cut. He did manage to land some strikes during the standing portion of the round. But at the same time, he was dominated for most of it. So he'll have to turn something around here in round number 3, and we'll see if he's got it in him. Round number 3 kicking off here between Braddock and Trombley. Touch of the gloves. Trombley does look very tired. That weight cut may be catching up to him, as well as the fact that he's been pretty much mauled here for the first 2 rounds. And Braddock's throwing some hands. I'm not really sure if this is a good idea. He's pawing out there with a jab, following it up with a right hook. But again, we talked about this in the preview, I think. Braddock's stand-up is... it's not great. I think is the easiest way to put it. The Team Link product does have some good striking coaches and everything, but at the same time, it's never something he's wanted to rely on. But I wonder if this is maybe a Habib Nurmagomedov ally Aquinta moment here. You got a tired opponent in front of you. You've got it. You got to think very, very much handled on the judges' scorecards. Do you work on a weaker aspect of your game? And Tromblay is lighting those legs up with leg kicks, but isn't really throwing much in the way of hands, to be honest. Braddock does not like those leg kicks. Every time one of them connects, he does have a little shake off of it. Definitely a little bit hurt there. And big overhand right turns into a diving takedown, and we're back on the ground. So Braddock was content to give you about a minute of stand-up time there, and Tromblay did not use a lot of it, if we're being completely honest here. We'll see what happens here with a little over 3.5 minutes in the fight here, potentially. Tromblay this time holding on to the guard. He is just stalling. He is going full on for the stall here. Honestly, this may be what he should have done to begin with, because the referee is asking for action from Braddock, who is kind of absolutely pinned here. There's not much going on. Tromblay knows, I need to get this fight to the feet, and if it's not on the feet, there's nothing I can do. There's nothing remotely that Tromblay seems to have for him on the ground in an offensive aspect. There's no submission game. There's no sweep game. And actually, there we go. The referee has elected to stand this up with a little bit under 3 minutes to go. Maybe just maybe just mercy for Tromblay, who looks very tired. I don't know if this is going to see the final scorecards, but at the same time, Braddock is not seemingly in any hurry to actually finish the fight. So I don't know what to do. Tromblay no longer throwing the kicks, just throwing out that jab, trying to connect with that, trying to find a right hand to land, as Braddock is showing very good head movement, actually shifting off and kind of avoiding a lot of what's coming in here. It's just really just kind of a pawing out jab. Now, he doesn't really have any offense going back the other way. A more refined and seasoned striker would probably have some counters for Tromblay here, and Braddock doesn't really have that. He's kind of just responding with his own kind of pawing jab, kind of like slapping at his hand almost. A little bit of patty cake that you sometimes see, and that's really about it. Braddock shoots in for a takedown. Big sprawl actually by Tromblay. I think this might be the first takedown he's fully stopped in this fight. Never mind, Braddock is just he's ridiculous. He drives through the sprawl and puts Tromblay on his back. Tromblay going for a guillotine choke. Looked like he gave up on trying to defend the takedown there at some point and did try for the guillotine. Braddock has obviously never been submitted. He's never been actually finished. Wait a minute. Someone call OSP. We got a Von Flue choke. A Von Flue choke locked in. And there's the tap. Tristan Tromblay, never been submitted before, has been tapped out at 4:03 of the third round by a Von Flue choke by Doug Chaos Braddock. I don't know what really to say about that, other than, I mean, obviously I think both of these guys have immense holes in their game that they need to address. Tromblay's is the grappling portion of the game, which is clearly very lacking. Braddock's stand-up is a little laughable and absolutely needs a wrestling threat to threaten him. The division is kind of filling up on much better grapplers. Like, I mean, you've got Jake Halter, not a good wrestler necessarily, but Marshall Zukes has got a good submission game off his back. That could be interesting. Gorby Bobian, of course, at 14-0 is a big threat in the division. Mark Caron. Really, it feels like almost anybody would be a bigger challenge to Braddock. So that's the one downside of this win, is that Braddock is going to be fighting some people that maybe in the near future, that definitely might be able to capitalize on some of the weaknesses and shut down his takedown game more. But we'll see. I could be completely wrong. He could come out there and do the exact same thing every time out. I mean, I've been saying this about Colby Covington for a long time, that as much as I easily see how you beat him, outside of Kamaru Usman, no one actually has. So there is that. There's no champion in this division yet, so presumably there'll be a GP for the middleweights in the near future. I think you got to think Braddock is in that tournament. I think you got to think Marshall Zukes is in that tournament. Probably the winner of Jake Halter versus Kevin Warenka is in that tournament. That's coming up next month. Next week from your point of view. Next month, Sim point of view. Mark Caron is facing Aramis Berto at OFC 16. So I think at that point we'll probably have a pretty good look at what the absolute upper levels of this division look like. And we'll see how that goes. Anyways, that is all from OFC 14. We got OFC 15 coming up. If you have not checked out that card, it is the Cruiserweight Tournament opening round with Mulrain versus Rapinga, Magus versus Upshaw, Edmonds versus D'Oliveira, Garrison versus Richards, as well as the aforementioned Halter versus Warenka middleweight bout. Tanya Graves is fighting Tatiana Marlowe in a big women's bantamweight bout that should determine who's going to go on to a tournament there coming up soon to determine the first champion there. And of course we got guys like John Big Kahuna Clover on the card, as well as Tommy Fireball Makovic, Christian the Human Skellenberger, and that's about it really. Those are, I think, probably the big names on the undercard. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the commentary, and we'll be coming back to you next week, somewhere around this time, maybe earlier in the week. I don't know. It kind of depends on when I have a moment, and that's what we're gonna do. So, hope you enjoyed, and spread the word if anybody wants to join the OFC ranks. Mwah!